Yeah, you know who it is, and for those of you that don't, I'm Cytonius, the opposite of the phoniest. And in case you haven't heard, Captain America is black now.
You need to leave!
There's a specific group of people who I won't call out by name who seem to have an issue with the comic book character Sam Wilson taking up the mantle of Captain America in the film Captain America: Brave New World. For a bit of context, at the end of the 2019 film Avengers Endgame, Steve Rogers decides to retire from the role of Captain America and pass the mantle off to his best friend and partner Sam Wilson, the superhero also known as the Falcon. This would lead to a television miniseries called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which would focus on Sam Wilson becoming the new Captain America. Contrary to popular speculation about the reception of the series, the show was actually one of the most watched miniseries on Disney Plus at the time of its release, and was critically acclaimed for its social commentary on race and politics. So fast forward to like right now, and people seem to be in a bit of an uproar about a Captain America film starring Sam Wilson that will most likely deal with issues regarding race and politics. In my 30 plus years of collecting, studying, and loving comics, one thing has always been apparent. Superheroes are a white male power fantasy. The framework for American superheroes is built from Eurocentric archetypes from things like Greek, Roman, and Norse mythology. Characters like Superman, Shazam, and Thor, and so many more are all constructed from that same foundation. And because of this, other ethnic and racial groups exist as afterthoughts in the world of superhero comic books. During the golden age of comics, black superheroes were mostly non-existent in the mainstream. It wouldn't be until the Bronze Age that we would see some of the first iterations of black mainstream comic book superheroes. The creation of black superheroes coincides with two significant cultural touchstones: the Civil Rights era and the blaxploitation entertainment movement. These two pop culture signifiers would create the context for the presence of black superheroes in American comics. While Fantastic Four issue 52 would give us the first appearance of T'Challa, the Black Panther, in 1966, it would be Captain America issue 117 in 1969 that would give us the first appearance of Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. While many people acknowledge T'Challa as the first black superhero in American comics, it would actually be the Falcon that would be the first African American superhero. While black characters existed in comics prior to Sam Wilson, many of them were rooted in minstrel show aesthetics, or their origins and identities would be deeply tied to Africa, like the all-Negro comics character Lion Man, and of course, Marvel's Black Panther. While there are several black superheroes that exist, very few, if any, exist as avatars of idealistic altruism. In fact, most black superheroes are deeply cynical. The reason for this is because black superheroes are built from a different framework than white superheroes. Racial politics are a major component of black superheroes in American media. Because black superheroes came to prominence during Generation X, a generation defined by socio-political progressivism and cynicism, black superheroes exist as racially charged avatars and second-class citizens of comic book culture. So why do we need a black Captain America? Especially when we have other prominent black heroes like Blade, Luke Cage, and War Machine. It's not a stretch to say that superheroes are by far the most aspirational and ideologically potent characters in fictional media. And at the top of that list is Captain America. In order to truly discuss and explore what Captain America is supposed to represent, we need to explore what America represents. While there's no textbook definition of America, there is an abstract idea of what America is supposed to represent. And the most prevalent expression of that is found in the Declaration of Independence.
When, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, and that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain What's that word there?
Unalienable.
With certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So the most common mistake that people make with Captain America is that they think he's an agent of the American government. He is not. Another mistake that people make is that they think America and the government are one and the same. They are not. The definition of the government is a collective of individuals who create and enforce the laws of a state, community, or country. These laws are a reflection of a country's standard of nationalism. But Captain America exists as a symbol of aspirational American patriotism. While patriotism and nationalism are often lumped together, they actually exist at slightly different ends of the socio-political ideological spectrum. Nationalism is the ideology that emphasizes loyalty and devotion to a nation above all else, while patriotism is a loving devotion to the ideals of a country. What Captain America represents is an unwavering and genuine devotion to altruistic heroism. So, that leads me to the main premise of this video. Is Sam Wilson worthy to be Captain America? Well, according to certain people on the internet, that answer would be no. But what disqualifies him from being Captain America? Created by Stan Lee and legendary artist Gene Colan, Sam Wilson would exist as the precursor to other Black Marvel superhero characters like Luke Cage, Blade, Brother Voodoo, and James Rhodes, aka War Machine. And while the late 60s and 70s produced a flurry of Black superhero characters, none of them were able to gain a level of respect and mainstream popularity comparable to their white counterparts. War Machine will never be as popular or as well developed as Iron Man. Luke Cage will never be as cool as Wolverine. And the Falcon will never be as respected as Captain America. So fast forward to now, where we exist in a world where characters like Blade, Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man, and the Black Panther are all household names with blockbuster movies. One would think the world was ready for a Black Captain America in film, but given some of the backlash to the movie Brave New World, maybe we haven't evolved as much as we thought. While superhero movies are some of the most scrutinized films of all time for changes made to the source material, Sam Wilson's transition into Captain America is straight from the page. It's not an understatement to imply that in the past several years, there has been significant pushback against making mass media reflect the more progressive aspects of pop culture. The Marvel Cinematic Universe in particular has been at the forefront of promoting and creating movies and television programs that embrace the increasingly diverse scope of entertainment. As a global mass media corporation, Disney and the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been at the forefront of promoting diversity. While many people think it's part of a woke agenda to ruin entertainment by promoting racially diverse characters and letting women be the lead of superhero movies, it's actually far less complicated than that. The reason we have a Black Captain America actually has more to do with globalization. In December of 1996, Marvel would file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy due to the declining comics market caused by the collapse of the comic speculator boom. A corporate reorganization plan was put into play to help Marvel Entertainment exit bankruptcy and get back on its feet. The corporate strategy involved using TV shows and movies as a way to raise mainstream awareness of their characters and raise profits for the company. Marvel would create a subsidiary company that would focus primarily on the development of television and film projects. From 1998 to 2004, Marvel Studios would lease their characters to various movie studios. Films like Blade, X-Men, and Spider-Man became game-changing blockbuster movies. In 2005, Marvel Studios would actually take out a loan with Merrill Lynch for $525 million to start their own movie studio. This would give birth to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's important to understand that entertainment is America's biggest cultural commodity, especially on a global scale. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been one of the most pivotal forces in American globalization. For those not familiar, globalization is the process of increasing the connection between world cultures and economies. And whether you agree or not, the fact of the matter is that the very diversity that people think is ruining superhero movies and blockbusters is the very thing that helps them thrive. The global movie market is a key factor in the success of any blockbuster film. Movies like The Fast and Furious, Star Wars, and of course the Marvel Cinematic Universe all have billion-dollar grossing films with a diverse cast. And while I know there will be people who disagree, the global movie market has proven that they don't just want to see white American men saving the world. So once again, is Sam Wilson worthy to be Captain America? Of course he is. But why is this even a question? Especially since Captain America is the one superhero who, regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation, anyone has the possibility to be. Throughout the 70 plus years that the character has existed, multiple people have had the title of Captain America, including characters such as Steve Rogers, Isaiah Bradley, Jeffrey Mace, William Burnside, John Walker, Bucky Barnes, and of course, Sam Wilson. While each Captain America was met with varying degrees of popularity and scrutiny, it will be Sam Wilson who will be the most execrated. Within nerd culture, race and gender seem to be the only limitations to a suspension of disbelief. In the world of comics, Thor can be a frog, but not a woman. Spider-Man can be a pig, but not an Afro-Puerto Rican teenager. And Captain America can be a fucking werewolf, but not a black man. If one were to correctly analyze the mantle of Captain America, especially in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they would see that each Captain America represents a different aspect of American socio-political ideologies. Steve Rogers represents old-school patriotism and nobility. John Walker represents dysfunctional jingoism. Isaiah Bradley represents the American military's history of racism against black soldiers. And Sam Wilson represents the aspirations of a post-racial, progressive version of America. And therein lies the peculiar issue that people have with Sam Wilson's Captain America. In 2014, when the character would officially take on the role of the Star-Spangled Avenger, Sam Wilson's time as Captain America would very much be a reflection of the promise of a post-racial America, spurred on by Barack Obama, the first black president. But unfortunately, Anthony Mackie is Captain America in Donald Trump's America.
A well-educated black has a tremendous advantage over a well-educated white in terms of the job market. And I think sometimes a black may think that they don't really have the advantage or this or that, but in actuality, today, currently, it's a great, I've said on occasion.
Look at my African American over here. Look at him. Are you the greatest?
He's a Mexican. We're building a wall between here and Mexico. The answer is, he is giving us very unfair rulings. Rulings that people can't even believe. This case should have ended years ago on summary judgment.
Our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell.
I'm asking for the vote of every single African American citizen in this country. What do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose?
No, I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person that I can tell you.
It's not a stretch to say that the last 10 years of American political discourse has been incredibly chaotic. And at the apex of that chaos is Donald John Trump. While America has always had issues with things like racism and xenophobia, the presidency of Donald Trump and the rise of MAGA has created a resurgence of candid and forthright bigotry that has been fuel for anti-progressive movements like Gamergate and Comicsgate. For those not familiar, Comicsgate is a right-wing social media campaign devoted to challenging racial representation, feminism, and any social justice progressive movements in the world of comics. In particular, race swapping. While race swaps have been a thing in superhero comics for a while, it only became an issue around 2012, which was the year after the creation of Miles Morales, a character some people would consider the patient zero of modern race swapping in comics. While people have different opinions of why race swapping is so prominent in superhero media, race swapping exists to rehabilitate decades of racism towards minorities in American comics. Because heroism is very much rooted in nationalism and ethnocentricity, Black American superheroes exist as a paradox that's reflective of America's complicated relationship with the topic of race and racism. In order for Sam Wilson to thrive as Captain America, he can never be better than or worse than Steve Rogers. This isn't just an issue in comics. This is a real-life issue that's plagued Black Americans for centuries. For every innovative and progressive concept or achievement in American culture, there's an unappreciated Black person that history forgot. I want to take a moment to talk about the real Black Captain America. No, not Sam Wilson. I'm talking about Private Henry Johnson of the Harlem Hellfighters.
Henry Johnson was from Albany, New York. He was relatively unknown until the night of May 15th, 1918. In the early morning hours, Henry Johnson was part of an observation team located along the Meuse-Argonne region.
Observation posts are about 30 yards out in no man's land to detect if there's movement on the enemy side. Johnson and another private, Needham Roberts from New Jersey, are in this post out in front one night when they hear movement.
Was that rats? Maybe. But they heard it again and again. And there was no mistaking somebody was snipping through the barbed wire coming for them.
He immediately sent up a flare, and before they knew it, a group of German soldiers, a raiding party, attacked. Needham Roberts was severely injured in the initial stages of the attack.
The Germans are lobbing grenades and shooting. Johnson is hit several times.
Henry Johnson's rifle jammed. He took it, wielding it as a weapon, attacking another German soldier.
He looks, there's Roberts. Roberts, who is being carried away by Germans. Johnson has no weapon on him except his bolo knife. He draws it and leaps at them like a 1980s action hero. He rams the blade through the skull of a German.
Henry Johnson was severely injured. Needham Roberts was handing him grenades. He was throwing them at the Germans.
Finally, the French show up to save them. When the dust clears, when the sun rises, it turns out that Johnson almost single-handedly has fought off between 25 and 40 Germans.
This became known as the Battle of Henry Johnson.
And after his exploits, a group of American journalists arrive at the camp, and they ask around, is anything going on here that we should know about? And somebody says, well, we had a little skirmish the other day. And they said, well, tell us about it.
The Battle of Henry Johnson spreads like wildfire.
The newspapers are full of Henry Johnson. Henry Johnson is the man.
Henry Johnson is really the first infantry hero of the Americans in World War I.
He receives the French Croix de Guerre, which is the highest award they can give a soldier.
It's tremendously significant that this hero is a Black soldier after a period when people have been maligning the capacity of Black soldiers. to hold up Henry Johnson and Needham Roberts as heroes is a powerful counterclaim to assertions of Black people's inability to do this.
The importance of a Black Captain America is deeply connected to the importance of Black Americans' role in military history. The parallels between Henry Johnson and Sam Wilson are obvious. Both exist as highly capable Black men in the United States Armed Forces who are underestimated and disregarded as culturally significant pillars of the American military due to racism. But this comparison also extends to the first Black Captain America, Isaiah Bradley. The concept of a Black Captain America is very much rooted in the paradoxical relationship that Black people have in the American military. Black men fighting for a country that fights their existence is very much a form of Stockholm Syndrome. And Sam Wilson as Captain America exists as the most prevalent example of this idea. What makes a Black Captain America such a complicated concept is that unlike other Black superheroes who can exist in either a racially oblivious state of being or a racially charged state of being, Sam Wilson's Captain America has to carry the burden of acknowledging the racial context of his existence while simultaneously pussyfooting around the subject of racism. Unlike his predecessor Isaiah Bradley, whose time as Captain America left him bitter and resentful of America due to the racism he endured while fighting for his country, Sam Wilson by default has to exist at the opposite end of Isaiah Bradley. But in my opinion, I think that's what makes Sam Wilson such a great version of Captain America. Unlike Isaiah Bradley, who is defined by personal trauma, Sam Wilson is defined by hope. And unlike Steve Rogers, who is defined by an outdated sense of patriotism and nobility, Sam Wilson is defined by socio-political progress. Sam Wilson as Captain America doesn't need to be Huey P. Newton or Malcolm X. Hell, he doesn't even need to be Martin Luther King. What he needs to be is perfectly expressed in this speech from the TV show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I'm a Black man carrying the stars and stripes. What don't I understand? Every time I pick this thing up, I know there are millions of people out there who are going to hate me for it. Even now, here, I feel it. The stares, the judgment. And there's nothing I can do to change it. Yet I'm still here. No super serum, no blonde hair or blue eyes. The only power I have is that I believe we can do better.
So that speech, as potent and philosophically resonant as it is, actually highlights a major issue that I have with the film Captain America: Brave New World. And that's the fact that the movie isn't really about anything. Each MCU Captain America film exists as a politically charged blockbuster that deals with specific topical ideas. Now, I know some people out there don't think that Marvel movies are cinema or that comic book movies shouldn't have any depth. But Marvel made an Avengers movie where the central issue was a villain who represented Neo-Malthusianism. Look it up. The first Avenger was a film about establishing Steve Rogers as more than just a symbol of American military patriotism. It was about Steve Rogers representing unwavering altruism. And he fought Nazis. Captain America: The Winter Soldier was about political subterfuge and government surveillance. Captain America's Civil War was about whether or not heroism should be sanctioned by the government or conducted as an act of goodwill independently. Even the TV show The Falcon and the Winter Soldier discusses topics regarding race and border jurisdiction. But the fourth Captain America film doesn't really discuss anything. For a film about the new Black Captain America, Brave New World isn't very enthusiastic or celebratory or even critical about what a Black Captain America means on a socio-political level. The commencement of Steve Rogers' time as the first Captain America and first super soldier is seen as a grand-scale achievement of military science. The announcement of John Walker as the new Captain America is treated as a culture-defining event. But Sam Wilson's time as Captain America isn't treated with much of anything. If we take a moment to look at the other prominent black MCU character with his own movie, the comparison is like night and day. In 2018, Marvel and Disney gave us the groundbreaking and culturally significant Black Panther, a film that fused Afrofuturism with African culture and important conversations about diaspora theory between Black Americans and Africans. But the main thing Black Panther managed to do is celebrate the beauty of African culture. This had an incredibly profound effect on pop culture. Black Panther turned a fictional African country into a modern-day utopia. And it turned T'Challa, a character who was a mostly obscure superhero in the mainstream, into a pop culture icon. Captain America Brave New World doesn't do any of this for Sam Wilson. In fact, the movie seems to be symptomatic of a recurring issue that I've noticed in a lot of Marvel Disney productions, and that's a clear and present trend of racial apathy. Characters like James Rhodes, Monica Rambeau, and Bill Foster. Yeah, did y'all know that Lawrence Fishburne played one of the other significant Black Marvel superheroes in Ant-Man 2? Well, you probably didn't know that because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is guilty of the long-standing Hollywood tradition of tone-deaf racial commentary and disregard of Black and brown characters. The American film industry is notorious for its misrepresentation of minorities. Historically, non-white performers have been the victims of some of the most heinous examples of cinematic racism. While the Marvel Cinematic Universe has never made a film equal to Birth of a Nation, they are guilty of cinematic subterfuge regarding how they discuss racism. With a character like T'Challa, who is not Black American, it's easy to create a film where he isn't defined by racial politics like police brutality, economic inequality, and historical prejudice, which are all things that define so much of the African American experience. This is a major factor in why Eric Killmonger was recontextualized in the Black Panther film as a Black radical nationalist, as opposed to a Black Tarzan like he was in the comics. It's easier for Hollywood to villainize Black nationalism than it is for them to demonize white racism. Films like The Green Book, Driving Miss Daisy, and so on exist to rehabilitate white people who are racist and only view racism as a behavioral malfunction of white people, and not as a pervasive institutional system designed to oppress specific groups of people based on race and ethnicity. The Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't want to have challenging conversations about racism in America, and Brave New World is a prime example of this. They made a movie where a Black Captain America fights the president, but nothing about that fight or conflict is truly political or racially charged. A better version of Brave New World would have had General Ross as a full-fledged villain that was opposed to the idea of Sam Wilson as Captain America. He would have advocated for John Walker to take up the mantle because he's more of a traditional version of what America is supposed to represent. This could have brought up important conversations about racism regarding the American military and regarding superhero culture. But there's no way Disney would allow Harrison Ford to display any traces of racism. Another thing the movie could have explored is why it's important that Sam Wilson doesn't take the super soldier serum. Many fans have complaints about Sam Wilson not being a super soldier, but I actually think it's one of the best things about the character. While I know people will disagree, it's very important to understand that the super soldier serum is not a defining aspect of Captain America. In fact, it exists in opposition of what Captain America has come to represent. Captain America, based on the standard established by Steve Rogers, is supposed to represent nobility, altruism, diplomacy, and democracy. But the historical context of the super soldier serum is tied to things like fascism, military might, government experimentation, and Nazi concepts of the Übermensch. Sam Wilson's Captain America isn't defined by his capacity for violence. He's defined by his capacity for compassion and an unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity. I think it's unfortunate that fans of superheroes have become so bloodthirsty and so against anything socially progressive that the idea of a film with a Black Captain America has become such a divisive thing and a politically contentious thing. It's difficult for me to try to predict the future or even the best direction for Sam Wilson in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. but I do know the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and superheroes in general needs to revert back to these characters being symbols of social justice and nobility. We can argue all day about whether or not Brave New World is the worst Captain America movie, but I'll never argue that Captain America himself, Anthony Mackie, doesn't understand what it means to be Captain America.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. It's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity. Someone who is trustworthy and dependable. This is kind of like an aspect of a dream coming true. When I was a kid, all of us as actors, I believe, want to get back to that day before someone told you no. When you look out your door and you see a 5-year-old kid with a stick and he's slaying dragons to save the princess in the tower, that kid really believes there are dragons out there. That stick is really a sword and he's really trying to save that princess. And then one day somebody told him, no, there are no dragons, that's not a sword, and that princess is not there. And all of his little dreams were dashed. So, as an actor, I feel like our job is to get back to the day where we see that dragon and we slay that dragon to save that princess. And that's kind of what this movie was for me.